As we approach the end of the 2022 NBA season, I thought there would be no better time to look back on all the best players of the season and give my 2022 All NBA team selections. Now, this season has been a wild, wonderful season of basketball, and as we all know, there have been many injuries throughout the season to multiple stars, and the competition in both conferences is higher than ever. So, to pick these 15 players that I think are been the 15 best players in the league all season was very, very difficult. But as you see, all these players are very deserving, and there are other players in the league that are also very deserving of being on All NBA team. To start off with the All NBA third team, we have our first guard, and that guard is Trae Young. He's had a fantastic statistical season, averaging nearly 30 points per game, nearly 10 assists, and nearly 3.5 rebounds. He's also improved his defense heavily. Obviously, he's still a defensive liability, but he's gotten much better on the defensive side of the ball. He has been the go-to guy for this team since he's gotten to Atlanta, and he has been the by far best player on this team. The only thing holding him back from being on potentially All NBA second team or even first team is the fact that the Atlanta Hawks are the 9th seed in the East. A lot of people probably had very high expectations going into the season, given that they were the 5 seed in the East last year and were a young and up and coming team. A lot of people probably projected them to be above what they were last year, but that is not the case this season. So I think, yes, Trae Young is having a phenomenal statistical season, but the fact that they are the 9th seed really lowers his status. Next guard on All NBA third team is a player in the West who is slightly older, Chris Paul. Chris Paul is currently playing on the best team in basketball, the Phoenix Suns. And man, have they been great. And that is a lot to do with Chris Paul. He's the best passer in the NBA, leading the league in assists. He averages nearly 15 points a game and is a phenomenal defender. Chris Paul has the highest IQs in the league, and he has had one of the highest IQs in the league for a while. He's been a phenomenal player throughout his entire career, but he's never had this impact on winning that he has currently with the Phoenix Suns. I think this impact on winning triumphs all his stats and is the main reason he deserves to be on an All NBA team. Next, we have our first forward on All NBA third team, and that is Jayson Tatum of the Boston Celtics. The Celtics disappointed heavily to start this season, starting out the season around the 10th and 11th seed throughout until All-Star break. But after All-Star break, something seemed to just click with Jayson Tatum and the Celtics, and they are now currently the 2nd seed in the East, standing with a record of 50 and 30, and were at one point for a little while the number 1 seed in their Eastern Conference. Jayson Tatum started off the season very slow, averaging nearly 23 points a game and was barely an All-Star player. But after that All-Star break and after that New Year's break, he turned it around heavily and is currently averaging nearly 27 points per game. And this switch we've seen with Tatum is not only in his scoring ability, but is also in his passing ability. As one of the main problems in the beginning of the season and throughout his career has been his horrible passing and decision making when it comes to passing the ball. But currently, in the last 20 games, he's averaging nearly 6 assists a game. If he was playing like at this level throughout the entire season, he'd be possibly on All NBA first team. Next player we have is LeBron James. Currently, the Lakers are the 11th seed in the West and have officially been eliminated at a chance to make the playoffs, which means obviously that they have no chance at even being in the play-in. And we look at the Lakers, probably the most disappointing team this season. They were projected by ESPN to finish the season with the 3rd best record in the NBA. Obviously, that is not the case. But when we look at LeBron individually, he's just like Trae Young, having a phenomenal statistical season. He is currently 2nd in points per game, averaging over 30 points per game. You could see it on the court when he's playing. He's not the same LeBron he was 5 years ago, but he is still an All-NBA player. And the only reason he's not on All-NBA first team, for me, is the fact that the Lakers will not be in the playoffs. For our center spot, we have Karl-Anthony Towns. The Timberwolves are currently the 7th seed in the West with a record of 45 and 35. And Karl-Anthony Towns is putting up one of the most impressive statistical seasons in NBA history, He's shooting nearly 41% from three as a center. He is the best three-point shooting center of all time, and there's no doubt about it, and this season solidifies it. Putting up a 60-point game this season and multiple 30-plus point games should be enough to say that Karl-Anthony Towns is deserving of being on an All-NBA team. Now for the All-NBA second team. And to start off with our first guard on All-NBA second team, we have Ja Morant. The Grizzlies are currently the second team in the West, and that's a lot to do with him. Ja Morant is currently in his third year in the NBA, and man, has he broken out. He went from averaging not even 20 points per game last year to being top 10 in scoring this year and averaging nearly 27 points per game. He's solidified himself as one of the flashiest players and most fun players to watch in the game. He's one of the hardest to guard. He leads the league in points per game in the paint, even though he's standing at just about 6'3", which is probably his most impressive statistical attribute. Grizzlies are the second seed in the West, and that is all thanks to Ja Morant. Next guard we have on All-NBA second team is Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors are currently the third seed in the West, and it has all to do with Steph Curry. Curry started off the season hot, looking like the clear-cut MVP, but started to slow things down and eventually got injured a few weeks ago by Marcus Smart. And the reason Curry isn't on All-NBA first team is because of this slow, unimpressive few months of basketball that we've seen from Curry. He just hasn't been the same player he was at the beginning of the season, but I still think he is the best point guard in the league. For our first forward on All-NBA second team, I have DeMar DeRozan. The Bulls were one of the most surprising teams in the league, and he was probably one of the most surprising players in the league. What people were calling the worst contract in the NBA turned into an MVP candidate over a few days. And yes, the Bulls have been kind of cold recently in the last few months, currently 60th in the East, but that is not due to any of their players, including DeMar DeRozan, playing a lackluster game. It has to do all with the fact that the Bulls have dealt with injuries all season, and we've seen what a fully healthy Bulls looks like. It looks like them as standing as the best team in the Eastern Conference. To lower DeRozan's status because the Bulls are currently the sixth seed in the East is unfair, given that the only reason they're so low in the standings is because of injuries. For our last forward spot, we have Kevin Durant. The Nets are currently the 8th seed in the East, but again, like the Bulls, this is all because of injuries. They've dealt with Kyrie being out for practically the entire season, and Kevin Durant has also dealt with some injuries, missing about 20 games this year. But we know Durant's a top 5 player in the league, if not the best player in the league, and his stats have been incredible this season. And I think we know how good he can be when fully healthy, and we've seen it this year. When he's fully healthy, he's unstoppable. Him being a top 3 player in the league, and to say he isn't on All-NBA second team at least would be undermining his talent. So I think he's easily All-NBA second team deserving. For our center spot, I have Pascal Siakam of the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors have been one of the most surprising teams this season and are one of the scariest teams heading into the playoffs. They are currently the 5th seed in the Eastern Conference, and that is all thanks to Pascal Siakam. He has been leading this team since All-Star break, putting up ridiculous numbers. He's averaging nearly 23 points per game, 9 rebounds, and 5.5 assists on the season. He's an elite defender. His three-point shooting has improved heavily since last season, and his turnover rate is very low compared to a high turnover rate last year. His plus-minus on the court is ridiculously high, and his team suffers when he's not on the court. He has been playing at a phenomenal All-NBA level since All-Star break, and he's definitely deserving of being on an All-NBA team. Now to move on to our All-NBA first teams. To start off with our first guard, we have Luka Doncic of the Dallas Mavericks. Luka can fill the stat sheet up on any given night in any category. He can rebound the ball at an elite level, he could pass at an elite level, and obviously he could score at an elite level. He plays at his own pace and controls the game whenever he wants to and however he wants to, and there's no stopping that. He's a point god at its finest. The Mavericks currently are the 4th seed in the Western Conference, and for a small period of time were the 3rd seed in the Western Conference. And I think if you take the Luka Doncic off this Mavericks team, you would be left with a team that has Jalen Brunson as their best player, and they'd probably be the worst team in the entire NBA. So I think we look at the value that Luka Doncic has to this team. He's easily an All-NBA first-team player. For our next guard, we have Devin Booker. I think this is an easy pick. He's the best player on the best team in basketball. He's the leading scorer, averaging nearly 27 points per game on a 63-17 team. I mean, we look at Booker, how he's been able to still carry this team even when Chris Paul was out. When Chris Paul went out, Devin Booker jumped from 27 points per game to nearly 30, and jumped from nearly 5 assists a game to nearly 8. I mean, we look at how Devin Booker's mentality and how he could just put this team on his back. He's found a way to fill up the stat sheet, but also win games at the same time. And I think that's what makes you an elite basketball player. So I think he's definitely an All-NBA first-team caliber player. For our first forward spot on All-NBA first team, we have Giannis Antetokounmpo. Not much to be said here about the reigning Finals MVP and two-time MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Bucks are the 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference. They've dealt with some injuries throughout the season. He's been the most dominant player in the league. He is the most dominant player in the league. He's been that for a while. He's putting up ridiculous numbers. He's an All-NBA first-team player, and there's no doubt about it. For our next forward spot, we don't really have he's not really a forward, but because he's just so talented and I couldn't leave one of them off the list, we have Nikola Jokic, the Denver Nuggets. Obviously, Jokic is a center, but as you probably know who my center pick is. I couldn't put one of them on All-NBA second team, given how talented Jokic and the other player I'm about to mention are. I mean, Jokic is having the best statistical season probably in NBA history. Any advanced stat, he probably leads the league in it. He's top 10 in points, rebounds, and assists. And he's on the 6th seed Nuggets, who don't have Jamal Murray or Michael Porter Jr. And currently the second best player on this team is Aaron Gordon. So I think just like Luka, if you take Jokic off this team is probably the worst team in the entire NBA. So I think Jokic is easily deserving of All-NBA first team. And if he's anything below All-NBA first team, it's just not right. For our center spot, we have Joel Embiid. And like I just said, I couldn't leave one of Joel Embiid or Jokic off All-NBA first team with how good they've been statistically this season and how good their teams have been and just how good they've been overall. Embiid is currently leading the league in scoring. He's having one of his most efficient seasons ever, shooting nearly 38% from 3 and 50% from the field. We know he's an elite defender. He's really improved his passing. He's put this team on his back as it's dealt with injuries, and Tobias Harris hasn't played as well as expected. Harden had a great start, but has kind of slowed down since getting to Philly. And he's really put this team on his back, and he's a clear MVP candidate. So that wraps up my All-NBA team selections. Thank you so much for watching this video, and hopefully you're here for our next video.